With the looming threat of U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs, a Buy Canadian movement.
Think American brands have Canada all wrapped up, like that reliable neighbor who always drops by with a pie. Think again.
Over the last several days, we've had many phone calls, many requests.
Because I am very aware of what's happening politically.
Quietly but steadily, more Canadians are pulling back from U.S. products. No headlines, no protests, just a slow, powerful shift under the radar. It's starting to hit hard. Big players like Walmart and McDonald's are feeling the squeeze, sales slipping, stores shutting, jobs vanishing. Some are even asking the government for a lifeline. What sets wild is most people don't even see it coming. If you are a regular customer, you might be surprised by what's really happening. In this video, we still break down 5 major American brands struggling to keep their footing in Canada and explore what this shift means beyond just dollars and cents. Stay with us till the end, because this quiet boycott might just change how we see the Canada-US relationship forever. Let's dive in before things change even more. McDonald's. When the golden arches start to dim, you'd think McDonald's would be untouchable, right? That no matter where you are, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, there'd always be a corner with glowing golden arches pumping out Big Macs like clockwork. But something surprising is happening, and it's not loud or dramatic, it's quiet. Canadians are simply walking away. Not because McDonald's ran out of freeze, not because of some scandal, just a slow, steady disappearance of interest. And honestly, that kind of silence is what keeps the folks at McDonald's up at night. For decades, McDonald's wasn't just a fast food joint, it was part of the culture. Birthday parties in the play area, first jobs behind the fryer, late night fries with friends. That signature smell of hot oil and ketchup practically defined childhood. And in Canada, it used to be everywhere. In big cities, small towns, highway rest stops. The Golden Arches were basically America's second flag, waving proudly across the border. But now, the numbers tell a different story. Since mid-2023, sales in Canada have dropped sharply over 12% nationwide, with Quebec alone down nearly 19%. Stores are cutting hours. Long-standing locations in Montreal and Vancouver quietly closing their doors. Some nights, you walk past a McDonald's and the dining room's empty, the lights dimmed like it's already closed. And the wildest part, Gen Z kids, who literally grew up on McNuggets and McFlurries, they're the ones walking away, not with a bang, not with hashtags, just disinterest. They want more freshness, transparency, a brand that feels like it stands for something. Instead of glowing screens and automated kiosks, they're looking for real food, real people, and real connection. McDonald's still exists, sure, but it's starting to feel like a brand out of time. A relic. Familiar, but not in a good way. And that hits hard, because once people stop associating your brand with joy and start seeing it as an empty routine, that's when things really start to slip away. McDonald's didn't just lose some customers. It starts losing meaning. And that's harder to recover. It makes you wonder if even Canada, America's best friend and most loyal neighbor, is pulling away. What does that say about us here in the U.S.? We used to export McDonald's like a symbol of American life, fast, fun, dependable. A burger and fries for the everyman. A taste of our culture. But now the culture is shifting. People want to know what's in their food, where it came from. If the company behind it actually cares about the community, and for all of McDonald's efficiency, scale, and consistency, those questions have gone mostly unanswered. Maybe the solution isn't another fancy limited-time sandwich. Maybe it's not touchscreens or global expansion. Maybe what McDonald's really needs is to become a people's place again. One that listens. One that changes, not for the sake of buzz, but for the sake of connection. Because if McDonald's sips can become forgettable in Canada, it can happen anywhere. And if the places that shaped our childhood memories start fading into the background, we have to ask, what else are we letting go of without even realizing it? Walmart. When the giant starts to stumble, let's talk about Walmart. Yes, that Walmart, the one with over $600 billion in annual revenue, hundreds of stores across Canada, and a reputation for being everywhere all the time. For years, Walmart wasn't just where you shopped. It was where Saturday mornings began, where you grabbed your groceries, a birthday card, a new pair of socks, and maybe a rotisserie chicken for dinner, all under one roof. But lately, that roof's been looking a little shaky in Canada. Not because of a scandal, not because prices suddenly spiked. It's more subtle than that, more quiet. Canadians are simply choosing not to show up. The checkout lines are shorter, the stores feel a bit colder, and more often, the only sound echoing through those vast aisles is the rustle of clearance signs being taken down. Walmart isn't being boycotted in the traditional sense. There are no loud protests or picket signs out front, just silence, shrinking foot traffic, empty carts. And that might be even more powerful. In the past year alone, Walmart has quietly closed more than 8 stores across Canada, especially in smaller communities like Calgary, Alberta, and St. John, New Brunswick. The kind of town where Walmart was once the only major store in sight. And when those doors close, they don't just take away deals, they take away convenience, consistency, and in some cases, the only large-scale grocery option for miles. That's not just about prices or products, that's about trust, about loyalty, about feeling seen. And that's where Walmart may have lost the thread. See, Walmart has long been the face of American retail, fast, massive, unbeatable on price. But those very strengths now carry shadows. Low prices make people question how employees are treated. Global reach makes locals wonder if their communities are being sacrificed for shareholder gains. Efficiency sometimes feels like indifference. Canadians, just like Americans, are becoming more mindful of what they support. They're choosing local, they're choosing brands that feel like neighbors, not corporations. Online, you'll now see posts with hashtags like #ShopLocal and #NotWalmart. Not angry rants, just everyday folks explaining why they now go to Loblaws or Sobeys instead. And this shift isn't driven by economics, it's driven by values. Sustainability, fair wages, real connection. A sense that the person behind the counter cares or at least knows your name. That's hard to scale, but it's also what people remember. So while Walmart may still be a titan, it sits learning that being big doesn't automatically mean being beloved. The truth is, Canadian shoppers aren't just walking away from Walmart. They're walking towards something that feels more human. And that's something American brands need to take seriously. Because every time we swipe our cards, we're not just paying for a product, we're voting for the kind of economy, community, and values we want to live in. Walmart can still turn things around. But it won't happen with another rollback or bigger ad campaign. It starts by stepping down from the pedestal, listening to people, and becoming a part of the communities they serve, not just a presence in their parking lots. Because when convenience loses its soul, people start looking for meaning elsewhere. Kraft Heinz, when familiar flavors go out of taste. Not long ago, you could open almost any Canadian kitchen cabinet and find a bottle of Heinz ketchup or a box of Kraft Dinner sitting on the shelf, steady, unchanging, like old friends. In fact, nearly 80% of households used at least one Kraft or Heinz product every single week. That kind of presence doesn't just happen. It means trust. It means tradition. But something has shifted. Today, those familiar red and yellow labels are disappearing, quietly, steadily, replaced by brands you've never heard of. Local jars, organic boxes, Homemade substitutes that feel more personal, more intentional. According to Kraft Heinz SIP's own Q1 2025 report, their revenue in Canada dropped over 6%, not because of rising prices, but because people stopped reaching for them. Step into a supermarket in Toronto or Vancouver and see for yourself. Heinz bottles are tucked away on lower shelves. Kraft Dinner is overshadowed by Canadian-made mac and cheese brands, promising cleaner ingredients, no preservatives, and flavors closer to home. This isn't just a trend, it's a shift in trust. Once, Kraft Heinz meant convenience without question. Buying from them felt like buying into something solid, like choosing safety, stability, and a little slice of Americana. But in today's world, convenience isn't set enough. Consumers want honesty. They want transparency. They want to know who made their food, where it came from, and whether it aligns with their values. And underneath that question lies something deeper, a fading sense of trust. After Kraft and Heinz merged in 2015, they became one of the most powerful food corporations on the planet. But with that power came tough decisions. The closing of the Leamington, Ontario plant, once a proud symbol of Canadian agriculture, thousands of jobs lost, and production lines moved to the U.S. and Mexico. Canadians didn't just lose tomato products, they lost a part of their identity, a part of their pride. They felt abandoned, replaced, forgotten. And when you lose that kind of emotional connection, no marketing budget in the world can patch it back together. Kraft Heinz once stood for an era when American families believed in mass production, trusted the big brands, and took comfort in the predictability of store-bought meals. But the next generation, they're not inheriting that trust, they're questioning it. Today's consumers say things like, "I want to eat clean. I want to support my community. I want food that means something." And that shift cuts deep. Because when a food brand loses its soul, its emotional place at the family table, it's no longer nourishment. It's just a product. And once that happens, even the most iconic labels can be overlooked. Like forgotten souvenirs from a time that no longer fits today's world. This isn't just happening in Canada, and it's not just about food. It sets a warning. Because if this kind of slow rejection is happening in a country as welcoming, as deeply tied to American culture as Canada, what's to stop it from happening in American towns next? At what point do we trade connection for convenience, meaning for mass production, to older generations in the U.S.? This isn't just a conversation about food labels, it's about legacy. About whether the dinner table still means something, or whether it's set as becoming just another place of transaction, because dinner, after all, isn't just a meal. It's where stories are told, where laughter echoes, where generations connect. Kraft Heinz still has a window if they choose to climb down from the corporate tower and listen, not through branding or new slogans, but through real, grounded action. Through sourcing locally, rebuilding jobs, giving communities a reason to believe again. And for the rest of us, maybe it's time to ask more of the brands we've trusted for decades. Not just what they sell, but why they matter. Because once we stop caring about that, we risk losing more than a label. We risk losing what made those brands special in the first place. Coca-Cola, the fizz that faded. For more than a century, Coca-Cola wasn't just a drink. It was America in a can. It was summer at the lake. Baseball under the sun. Fireworks on the 4th of July. It was the crack of a cold can shared with family, neighbors, strangers, a universal symbol of joy, of belonging. But in today's Canada, that iconic red can now sits on store shelves like a forgotten postcard from another era, unopened. According to Coca-Cola's own 2024 internal report, the brand has lost nearly 9% of its market share in Canada, not to another soda titan, But to silence that to shelves lined with local sodas, glass bottles of sparkling spring water, and artisanal kombucha in soft, earthy tones. The message is clear. Nostalgia doesn't sell like it used to. Once, Coke was a friendly import from the American dream, fizzy, familiar. Cracking one open felt like stepping into a memory. The sound wasn't just carbonation. It was the echo of childhood road trips and family cookouts. But now, Canadian grocers are quietly shrinking Coke Sip's shelf space. The new generation is reaching for beverages with meaning, low sugar, no artificial additives, locally made, ethically sourced. For Gen Z and millennials, Coke is no longer the default. According to the 2024 Canadian Consumer Survey, over 62% of them have actively replaced it. This isn't rebellion, it's evolution. Coca-Cola hasn't changed much in over 100 years. That used to be its strength. Now it's the very reason it's being left behind. In a world where values matter more than brand loyalty, Coca-Cola's legacy of sweetness and sameness feels out of place. Even with its countless spin-offs, Diet Coke, Coke Zero, Coke No Sugar, it still clings to the past, while today's consumers are looking ahead. They're not just drinking for taste anymore, they're drinking for identity. Coca-Cola didn't stumble because it failed to deliver a good product. It stumbled because the world moved forward, and it stayed still. It still markets happiness. But today's consumers want something deeper. They want truth, transparency, connection. To the new generation, Coca-Cola is no longer the global connector it once claimed to be. It sets the emblem of a towering corporation, glossy on the outside, but hollow in emotional currency. A brand that once meant something, now struggling to mean anything at all. Can Coca-Cola survive? Sure, but not on nostalgia alone. If it wants to stay relevant, it must stop looking backward and start looking inward. It must rediscover its place in people's sips' lives, not just through clever ads, but through genuine responsibility, through cleaner ingredients, community partnerships, real sustainability. Because this isn't just about soda, it's about identity, and for Americans, especially those who grew up with a Coke in hand, this raises a harder question. When the things that once defined our childhood, our summers, our family rituals, begin to disappear, are we just watching history fade? Or are we letting it go because it no longer speaks to who we are? Because if even Coca-Cola, the sweet, simple taste of America, can slip away into irrelevance, what else might follow? Campbell's, the silence where comfort used to be. Do you still remember the sound Campbell's soup made when you popped it open on a cold afternoon? That gentle click was more than just the start of a meal. It was the sound of comfort, of warmth bubbling on the stove, of family. But today, in Canada, that sound is slowly vanishing. Over the past 2 years, Campbell's has watched its foothold in Canadian homes slip away. Sales have dropped by more than 8%, and grocery chains are quietly downsizing its shelf space, making room for something else, something new, something more honest. Local soup brands, preservative-free, made with recognizable ingredients, inspired by homemade flavors, are now the go-to. And Campbell sits? It's still there. But stillness on a shelf says everything. According to data from Canada Sits, largest supermarket chains, Campbell's has lost 12% of its market share in the canned soup category in just 18 months. And here's the thing, no one staged a protest. No one called for a boycott. People just stopped choosing it. Campbell's used to win because it was dependable, affordable, shelf-stable, familiar. The red and white label was a symbol of simplicity, of love stirred into a pot. But now that simplicity feels oversimplified, unconvincing. Today's consumers, in Canada and increasingly in the U.S., aren't just looking for something warm to pour into a bowl. They're asking deeper questions. What's actually in this can? Where did the ingredients come from? Is this real food or just a nostalgic echo? And for a brand built on mass production, dated flavors, and a marketing history that rarely had to adapt, the silence has become deafening. Campbell's Sips didn't fall because the soup tasted bad. It fell because it didn't evolve. In a time where consumers want transparency, freshness, and food that reflects their health and environmental values, Campbell's voice began to feel distant, cold, manufactured. The brand didn't lose to better soup. It was a loss of trust. Trust that what we feed our families should be honest. Trust that a beloved name still stands for something. Trust that the food we reach for still understands us. Campbell's Sits has more than a century of history, but legacy alone can feed a changing world. If the brand wants to be more than a memory, it must reconnect. Not with slogans, but with sincerity. Because this isn't just about soup, it's about what we've always believed soup meant. For American families, Campbell's retreat in Canada should feel personal. It's not just a sales report, it's a quiet alarm. Because if we let even our simplest traditions, like a shared meal on a cold day, be replaced by speed, by artificiality, by brands that stopped listening long ago, then we're not just losing soup. We're losing something more sacred, the invisible love we pass around the table, the memory of being taken care of without asking, the feeling that someone or something was always there. And if we are not careful, one day we set open the pantry and realize that warmth has gone silent. There was a time when the world looked to America not just for products, but for a feeling. Trust in American goods wasn't just about quality, it was about what they meant. A can of Campbell's, a Kraft Heinz squeeze bottle, a Big Mac wrapped in paper-thin dreams. For decades, these weren't just things Canadians bought. They were extensions of an ideal of neighborliness, freedom, and the belief that America stood for something good. In many ways, they believed in us even more than we believed in ourselves. Something is shifting, not with riots, not with fiery speeches or dramatic boycotts, just with choice, or rather, the quiet act of choosing something else. Canadian shelves are still stocked with American staples, but fewer hands reach for them. The red and yellow labels are still there, but the loyalty is not. This isn't just a trade story. It sets a mirror, and in it, we see not just what the world is turning away from, but what we have become. If Canada, our closest cultural and geographic ally, a nation that shares our language, values, and democratic spirit, no longer finds meaning in the symbols we built our identity around, then maybe it's time we asked ourselves, what happened to the spirit behind those brands? Once, American products stood for integrity in what went into them, responsibility in how they were made, connection to the people and communities they served. Now many of those same products feel mass-produced, not just in factory terms, but in emotion. What once felt close now feels corporate. What once felt like us now feels like them. For older Americans, especially those who worked at places like Campbell, Kraft, or Walmart, this moment cuts deeper than just sales reports. It cuts personal. It cuts watching the pride you once felt in your job get reduced to a brand no longer loved. It cuts telling your grandkids, I helped make that, only to see them shrug and reach for something organic and unfamiliar. Jobs are fading. Brand value is slipping. And the quiet question grows louder. If we lost Canada, who sips next? You might not care about a lonely can of soup or a dusty box of mac and cheese, but maybe you should, because for many of us, these weren't just products. They were part of growing up. They were the backdrop of American kitchens, of road trips and school lunches, of comfort and consistency, and now they're becoming relics. When brands like Coca-Cola or Kraft Heinz begin to vanish from the carts of our closest neighbors, it's more than just market fluctuation. It's emotional erosion, a soft, steady disconnection from everything we thought was unshakable. This isn't a story of collapse. Not yet. It's a story of drift, a slow fade from relevance, not because the world changed too fast, but because we stopped listening. We stopped asking, what do people really want? What do they need from us? Not just on the shelf, but in their lives. In this new era, the most powerful brands won't be the loudest. They'll be the ones who can still speak to our emotions, to our values, to our need for something real. And if we care about preserving the essence of the American dream, not just for us, but for how the world sees us, then we can't afford to keep selling nostalgia in a world that's asking for sincerity. It's time we demanded more from the names that once defined us. More heart, more transparency, more connection. Because when the people who used to believe in you stop choosing you, it sets not just their trust yous they've lost, it sets your reflection. And sometimes, the quietest goodbye is the one that hurts the most. If this story stirred something in you, a memory, a moment, or just a quiet thought, we'd love to hear it. What did it make you think of? Share your thoughts below and join the conversation. And if you want to follow the deeper stories behind the changing face of America, stories of places, people, and the symbols we once held close, make sure to hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any new videos. Because this country is evolving in big ways and in quiet ones, whether we choose to notice or not. This video was created to share perspective, to reflect, not to represent. All views are based on publicly available data and independent analysis, and they may change as the world keeps turning. Thanks for watching all the way through. Until next time, take care. And take a moment to notice what's quietly slipping away.